In our last visit together, Gordy provided some thoughts on the importance of organizational discipline. In this video, titled Job-Based Harassment, Gordy will talk about the hot topic of harassment in the workplace. This is not a black swan, but rather a gray rhino, and the consequences for allowing inappropriate behavior in the workplace are significant. Gordon will provide some proven strategies and tactics to address this critical issue with the ultimate goal of better protecting all of your personnel from inappropriate behavior.
Hello again, Gordon Graham here with video number 8 of 9. And as promised at the end of video number 7, this time I want to focus on job-based harassment. And right now, this is a hot topic around the U.S. Spacey, Steve Wynn, Bill Cosby, all the Me Too group, all the inappropriate behaviors going on in the workplace. But let me give you something, a little hint. This is nothing new. Harassment, bias, and discrimination have been around for a long time, a long, long time. Race harassment has been around forever. Religious harassment has been around forever. Gay harassment has been around forever. In the U.S., it's been around since the start of our country, and nobody got worked up on it. I'll tell you when people started getting concerned. World War II. World War II. Prior to World War II, there were very definite jobs in America based on your race and your sex. There was a term that was around when I was growing up in the 50s called women's work. If I said women's work today, I'd get shot. There were specific jobs for black Americans, specific jobs for Mexican Americans, and that was as high as you could go. Specific jobs for Asian Americans, and then World War II happened. And we needed 100% of our population fighting the common enemy. So all of a sudden, black Americans were doing non-traditional jobs, along with Mexican Americans and Asian Americans doing non-traditional jobs, and women doing non-traditional jobs, and everybody worked together, and the U.S. won the war. And after the war, people tried to put the genie back in the bottle. Okay, war's over, go back to what you were doing. Black Americans had a complaint. Hey, I flew these airplanes in World War II. How come I can't fly them now as an airline pilot? Well, you're really not qualified for that job. Mexican Americans had a complaint. I was a contractor in World War II building those massive buildings for the military. How come I can't be a contractor now? Well, really, that's not your job. Women had a huge complaint. Look what I did during World War II. I built these planes. I built this. I built this. How come I can't have this job now? And people tried to put that genie back in the bottle, and it didn't work, and there was a lot of unrest in the late 40s, early 50s. I think it all came to a head in the early 60s. And what happened then? Kennedy got elected. And contrary to what you might have been taught, Kennedy initially was opposed to federal intervention in civil rights issues. He thought the states could take care of it. Remember, he was a United States Senator. And very quickly into his presidency, he learned that a lot of states were not taking this seriously, so federal intervention was necessary. And in 1963, before he was assassinated, he started working on the Federal Civil Rights Act, which ultimately passed in 1964, which created Title VII, which created the enforcement arm of Title VII, the EEOC. And I can state this with relatively solid certainty. Almost every law in every state that we have regarding harassment, bias, and discrimination started way back in the early 70s. And People were still being treated inappropriately in various workplaces, harassment, bias, and discrimination based on protected class status, race, sex, religion, all those different types of issues. So the courts started hearing these cases way back in the 70s based on their role in the EEOC. Take a look at that chart there you've got in front of you. On the right-hand side of the chart, again, the area I always call Lawyerville, the EEOC is the domain of lawyers. The Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. Next to it is the State Human Rights Commission. That's the domain of lawyers. Next to that is the civil lawsuit. Again, the domain of lawyers. Next to that, the criminal investigation if the conduct is egregious enough. Again, the domain of lawyers. And the internal investigation, the domain of lawyers. Those are the consequences. Those are the consequences that occur when people think, you know what? I am not being treated right at work. They got the federal option, the state option, the civil option, the criminal option, and the internal option. And I am jumping way ahead in the lecture here. But of the five, you as a GM, you as an AGM, you as a department head, which of the five options did you hope the employee would choose? And if you're being honest with yourself, you want them to choose number 5, the internal investigation. It's the quickest, it's the cheapest, it's the easiest way to resolve issues very, very quickly. Can I give you a big hint? And I'm jumping way ahead in the lecture here. If people don't have faith in the internal process, they'll abandon that and go external. And then you've got major, major problems. More on that in just a bit. So the courts, and all being lawyers, they were looking at the behaviors that generated the allegations of harassment, bias, and discrimination. And there was thousands of specific behaviors that generated the complaint. Inappropriate behaviors, inappropriate comments, inappropriate actions, inappropriate things going on in the workplace. And they took all of those inappropriate behaviors and they put them into 3 families. On the chart, it just developed there. Family 1, quid pro quo. Family 2, retaliation. And family 3, the hostile work environment. And remember, the courts came up with this way back in the 70s, the 3 families of inappropriate behavior. And here we are 40, 45, 50 years later, it's still the 3 families. You read the advanced sheets today coming out from all the courts around this great nation, the allegations are still in these 3 families, quid pro quo, retaliation, and hostile work environment. Let's take these one at a time so we can identify what it means and what can we do up front as a risk manager to prevent these things from happening. Quid pro quo is a Latin expression, raw translation, this for that. You do this for me, I'll do that for you. Nothing wrong with quid pro quo. I love quid pro quo. I do it as often as I can. My relationship with AAWD&M right now is quid pro quo in nature. Do this work and we will pay you. I have a quid pro quo relationship going on with my wife. I drag her to cop parties. She drags me to dog parties. That's quid pro quo. You do this for me, I'll do that for you. I have a quid pro quo relationship going on with my daughter. You know, get good grades and I will pay you. You know, there's nothing wrong with quid pro quo until sex becomes part of the equation. Have sex with me or you're fired. Have sex with me and I'll get you a new car. Have sex with me and I'll get you that overtime. Have sex with me and I'll get you a better assignment. That is illegal. That is immoral. That is a very big deal. And guess what? That goes on around America. That goes on. Quid pro quo. Quid pro quo, have sex with me and I'll do this for you. It's illegal, it's immoral, it's a very, very big deal. And literally, there are thousands of specific behaviors that generate quid pro quo allegations. Get beyond the proximate cause and look for root cause. Root cause. There are 2 root causational factors that allow quid pro quo in the workplace. Root causational factor number 1, don't hire, don't promote losers. Comprehensive background investigations. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Leopards don't change their spots. You cannot train the immoral to be moral. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Do your background checks. Don't hire losers. And the second root causational factor for quid pro quo, don't date, don't attempt to date people who work for you. Nothing but bad is going to happen here. Don't date people who work for you. Don't date people who you work for. Even if it's legal in your state, don't do it. Nothing but bad is going to happen here. Hey, let's play hypothetical. Let's play hypothetical. So I am the AGM for a water district, and I ask one of you out, and you agree, and we go out, and we're in love. Now I've got to pick somebody to inspect a water district in Switzerland. They've got this brand new water purification process, and we need somebody to go there to see what they're doing. So I honestly evaluate all of my employees, and you know what? The woman I'm living with, in my opinion, is the most qualified. Let me give you a hint. Perception's reality. Even if she is the most qualified, in the eyes of everybody else in the workplace, is the only reason she's getting selected because she's dating the AGM. That perception's our reality. Here's another reality for you. I ask you out, and you say no. All right, no harm, no foul. It's all over. I was professional. I asked you. You respectfully turned me down. You said no, and I don't bother you anymore. In reality, have I given that employee a silver platter with a golden defense for any actions against that employee? 5 years from now, we're trying to fire that employee for theft. I have given her lawyer a guaranteed defense. Excuse me, AGM Graham, did you or did you not ask out my client 5 years ago? I did. And what did she say? Well, same thing they all said. No. You know, what's that mean to a jury? I am getting even with this person for rejecting my sexual advances. Don't hire, don't promote losers, and don't date people who work for you. Don't date people you work for. Nothing but bad is going to happen here. That's quid pro quo. The second one is retaliation. What's retaliation? Retaliation, that's where someone files a complaint and then people gang up on them and treat them inappropriately because they filed the complaint. It's illegal, it's immoral, and it's a big deal. And it doesn't just happen to the employee, it happens to other employees who are friends, family members, etc., and there are lots of proximate causes for that allegation. Root causational factor number 2, performance evaluations. Performance evaluations. I've already beaten this to death, but a quick recap. Go ahead. Just keep on overrating people because you're lazy. Just keep on overrating people. Oh, yeah, you're doing great, you're doing great, you're doing great, everything's wonderful. And then they file a complaint against the water district. They file a complaint, and they name you as a defendant of the complaint. Now you're angry. Do they get an overrated performance evaluation this year? Oh, no, because we're angry now. We are angry now. Needs improvement, needs improvement, needs improvement, doesn't meet standards. To a jury, does that smell like retaliation? They were doing fine until they filed their complaint. No, in reality, they were never doing fine. We overrated people because we're lazy, and those documents came back to haunt us. Quid pro quo and retaliation, though, are not the big dogs in the world of harassment. Most of the complaints I read in water districts are not quid pro quo, not retaliation. It's hostile work environment. And what's the definition of a hostile work environment? Severe, pervasive pattern and practice of misconduct directed to protected class status. And there are 2 root causational factors for a hostile work environment. Number 1, supervisors not behaving like supervisors. And have I beat that to death enough yet today? The primary mission of a supervisor is enforcement of organizational policy. And if you got supervisors who are not enforcing the policy, that's a problem lying in wait. And the second root causational factor here is supervisors who tried to behave like supervisors and got no support from management. Both of those are problems lying in wait. So those are the 3 families of harassment. So what can we do to address it? I've got a 4-hour program on harassment. You know, and maybe someday you'll be in one of my classes. Just a quick little thought. Here's the way I start off my harassment class. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Gordon Graham here. I've got you for 4 hours on job-based harassment. Let's get started. And I reach into my briefcase, and I pull out a stack of 3x5 cards, and I walk through the group, and I give out the 3x5 cards to every woman in the group. Every woman gets a 3x5 card. And you can hear people talking while I'm doing that. What's he doing? What's he doing? He's only giving the cards to the women. And then I get back up front and I say this, ladies, would you please take a look around the room and write down the 5 biggest sexual predators in this room right now? Everybody's, what are the women doing? They're writing. And then I go around and pick up the cards. I've been doing this for years. In every stack of cards, is there always one name that jumps off the card at higher frequency? There's always a name that jumps off the cards at higher frequency. And I hold those cards up to the chief of police or the fire chief, and I say, you know something, chief? I'll sell you these cards for $25,000. And you can see him thinking, ha ha. And then I tear the cards up. My guess is you don't need to buy them. My guess is what? You already know. We know who the problems are. Once again, it's a matter of will. If you take that employee on to stop the inappropriate behavior before a complaint is filed, you get paid X. If you don't do jack, you get paid X. Mediocrity's replaced accountability. We have got to take this issue seriously. Get a good policy, enforce the policy, people, policy, training, supervision, and discipline. Which brings us to GRESH. GRESH 1 on your screen in front of you. As you know, these are my rules for the elimination of sex harassment, and all other versions of harassment are included in there. What do we need to be doing up front? If you want to address harassment in the workplace, get yourself a good policy that is regularly reviewed by competent counsel and make sure it's in compliance with state and federal law. You need a harassment policy that covers all protected classes, and if you have not updated your harassment policy in the last year, it is probably out of date. GRESH 1, you want to address harassment, get yourself a good policy. GRESH 2, build your commitment to the elimination of harassment, bias, and discrimination into the hiring process. Job announcements have got to contain this commitment. During the hiring process, ask the very specific questions requiring the very specific answers as much as the law allows prior to employment. Don't hire those who are unwilling or unable to abide with your organization's policy. GRESH 3, make sure your current employees know the harassment policy. Knowledge is more than having a piece of paper saying they went to a class one time in time some time ago. Harassment is one of these issues that needs to be covered on a regular basis. It is not a core critical task, but it is one of those high-risk areas that needs to be covered at least annually. And, as I referenced earlier when I talked about performance evaluations, an excellent time to talk about harassment once a year is during the performance evaluation process to make sure people understand your organization's commitment to the elimination of harassment, bias, and discrimination. GRESH 4, for those of you who are the supervisors, the managers, the executives, set the proper example. Personnel will never follow a policy if it's not complied with by supervisory and management personnel. Supervisors and managers who are aware of inappropriate behavior and fail to enforce the policy have ratified the inappropriate behavior and have encouraged future inappropriate behavior. GRESH 5, remember the principles of risk management. Principles of risk management, 3 basic rules in risk management. There's no new ways to get in trouble. There's always a better way to stay out of trouble. And the 3rd basic rule, predictable is preventable. Identifiable risks are manageable risks. If you can identify the risk, you can put together control measures up front. Now, the control measure I put together way back in 1986 to address harassment in the workplace is called CAT Sinro. There it is on your screen in front of you. CAT SINRO. When I started studying the quid pro quo allegations and the retaliation allegations and the hostile work environment allegations, I came up with 3 behaviors that are getting us in trouble. Inappropriate comments, inappropriate actions, inappropriate things at work. And out of that came CAT Sinro. Before you say something, before you do something, before you bring something to work, analyze what you're doing. CAT SINRO. Is it a comment? Is it an action? Is it a thing? Is it sexual in nature or racial or other protected class status in nature? Would reasonable people find your behavior offensive? And if your answer is yes or I'm not sure, eliminate the behavior up front and you will never have a problem downstream. for those of you who are supervisors and managers. Not only do you have to analyze the employee behavior, you've got to analyze your behavior. Before you say something, before you do something, before you bring something to work, cats in row. Are there comments, actions, and things going on in the workplace involving sex, race, religion, sex orientation, other protected class status that reasonable people would find offensive? Eliminate the behaviors up front, and you will never have a problem downstream. Which brings us to what? Once again, my reference to MBWA and SBWA. Management by wandering around. Supervision by wandering around. Walk around your workplace and look for problems. Walk into the locker room. If there's inappropriate posters going up in the locker room, that's a problem lying in wait. Listen to what people are saying. If there's inappropriate jokes going on in the workplace, that is a problem lying in wait. Listen to what people are saying about the way they're treated. If there's something going on, that could be a problem lying in wait. So, if you are that boss, you might be able to prevent some problems by being proactive and identifying problems before they end up in tragedies. Again, that is the purpose of that APE. Every year during the performance evaluation process, and you get a copy of that through AAWD&M, you can get it. Ask those questions. Are you aware of our GM's commitment? Are you aware of any inappropriate behaviors going on in the workplace? Ask those questions on a regular basis. GRESH 6, as much as possible, try to discourage dating between supervisors and employees. As I've already told you, bad things are going to happen. GRESH 7, and I've already teased you on this. Ensure you have a program for the prompt, fair, and impartial investigation of all complaints. Remember, the person who thinks I'm not being treated right, they've got 5 options: federal, state, civil, criminal, and internal. And I would hope that they would use the internal. But if people think I am not going to get treated right, they're going to go external in a heartbeat. Please take the complaint seriously. Get a process on how to investigate these complaints. If you're hiring outside people to do that stuff, make sure the process is known and being taken seriously. If people don't think they're going to get a fair shake inside, they'll go outside in a heartbeat. GRESH 8, forget the welcome versus unwelcome analysis. You've heard this from every other harassment instructor around the country. Well, welcome behavior is legal behavior. Welcome behavior is legal behavior. Unwelcome behavior is illegal behavior. The only rule that works, folks, is zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. And I'm not a fan of zero tolerance, but I don't know how else to say it. Do your cat syndrome analysis, comments, actions, and things about sex, race, religion, and sex orientation do not belong in the workplace, period, end of story. GRESH 9, as I've already talked about, there is a link between the way we treat each other and the way we treat our customers. And again, you show me an organization that is plagued internally with inappropriate behaviors, I am going to show you the same behaviors externally. On the other hand, you show me an organization where the rule is dignity and respect internally, you'll see the same behaviors being manifested externally. And finally, GRESH 10, a wrap-up of everything I've said. Remember, those 3 basic rules of risk management. Rule 3, things that go wrong in life are predictable, and predictable is preventable. Do the job today. Recognize the 5 pillars that I beat to death in video number 4. You want to avoid problems downstream in Lawyerville? People, policy, training, supervision, and discipline. Take one away, bad things are going to happen. Preventing problems is easy. You treat people the way you'd like to be treated. If you don't have something good to say, don't say anything. Keep your hands to yourself, and you get more flies with sugar than you get with vinegar. This is not advanced rocket science. It's predictable, and it's preventable, and it is the 8th of our 9 video programs. I've got one left, some thoughts on ethical decision-making. Let me give you a teaser on that, and I've already said it. In many organizations, we teach our people how to do things. We don't teach them how to think. What I want to do in this last video program is give you a checklist, because you know I'm a big fan of checklists, a 10-step process on how to think things through. And that will be our topic in our final video program coming up. To you, I look forward to seeing you then. Until then, work safely.
We thank Gordon Graham for his deliberative, comprehensive, and interlinking risk management video series. AAWD&M would also like to thank the California Association of Mutual Water Companies, Appalachian State University, and our charter members for their support in producing these videos. We welcome you to visit AAWD&M's website at www.aawdm.org for more details on the association's mission, initiatives, and services. The AAWD&M video module series is available to all public water systems, related entities, and supporting stakeholders. Utilization of any aspect of this video without the express written permission of AAWD&M is strictly prohibited. As with any presentation, the opinions associated with this subject matter are those of the speaker and not of AAWD&M, its members, or supporters. Thank you.